So I'm looking forward to talk about the skills that pays the bills. This is important.
Yeah, it certainly is. And it does fluctuate and vary from country to country, and even within demographics as well within each country. So how should you negotiate your salary given the data that we've received from PayScale recently? Is it too high or is it too low? What are your thoughts, Dave?
I think it's medium data, so it's about average. And so if you live in Silicon Valley or any of the major cities, even Melbourne and Sydney and some of the European city centers as well, you're going to get a bit more. You can go to Indeed.com. You can go to other sites and look at what people are hiring. It's kind of funny. The people that are more talented out there seem to be the worst negotiators. Yet the people that are least talented out there seem to be the best negotiators, especially with the merit skill jobs. And anyway, you're a recruiter, so what's your take on this? What do you advise your folks to do?
Well, that was a very subtle cue there, David. Thank you very much. So yes, look, I think there's a mindset around all of this, and like you say, the more talent, the poorer the negotiation skills. That's true to a certain extent as well, and the mindset of their belief factors in themselves denotes their self-worth. Not only self-worth within the marketplace, but self-worth within their whole life. And that can stem back from historic events, etc., growing up, college, university, relationships, all sorts. So I think, if you're looking at the sub-levels behind self-worth, mindset, what they're worth in the workplace, and how they work around their colleagues, I think there's a lot of layers that I look into, and there's a bit of psychology that goes to that as well, as you can imagine. In fact, I'll give a quick story. I was working with a candidate that came to me, was very interested in and very good at AI, and he was an awesome guy. I mean, what he was doing outside the workplace was fantastic with cryptocurrencies and artificial intelligence and IBM and Watson and everything. I mean, it's just the list of things he was doing was fantastic, but he had a different perception of how he was positioned within his company, and we did a couple of sessions which was really enlightening for him and really helped him, and I actually had about 2 or 3 positions lined up for him to make a move. Location wasn't great, etc., of his current employer. Anyway, I think it was a couple of weeks later he came back to me and said, Brad, he goes, I'm really sorry, but this mindset shift has happened. I've gone back to my boss with a different mindset. They're now giving me a 25% pay increase as long as I stay with them, and I'm going to get more autonomy with being able to be working from home, and it suits everything. And I thought, that's a good story. That's a feel good story. Okay, I've not necessarily made anything out of it in respects of a commission, but essentially his life has moved on, and that's good either way. If you make out of it, that's fine, but you still make out of it from a factor that you've helped someone shift their mindset for that self-belief going forward, that he's got now he's empowered himself through different techniques that we used to go back to his current employer that he'd been working for 2 or 3 years, and the mindset shift enabled him to get the pay increase that he needed and deserved, and not only that, but get more autonomy as well. And so he'd cut down the travel problem, which was, like you say, a location issue is a lot of the problems with getting the salary you require based on your location. So he really got a win-win out of that, and I got sort of a feel-good factor. So I suppose it was still a win for me as well. But I think so I've gone off the beaten track with that story, but I think it's really down to knowing the market worth of that position that you've got based on certifications, based on your experience, obviously focused on certain projects, appreciating all of that, but equally being able to take a step back and say, well, from a career growth point of view, is it worth me taking on a project that's going to give me these opportunities for slightly less money? Am I going to get more of a satisfaction out of it than rather going in at the top end of the market and just being a servant to the industry and just doing something that's, to a certain degree maybe just be boring because it doesn't actually push the mind or the capabilities of that individual, but they're getting paid 20 or 30,000 more, but it could almost look a bit stale on their CV or stale in their mindset for their career.
Yeah, and I think those are decisions you have to make. And also remember that these positions are kind of like fruit. They get they get rotten after a while, and you have to move on to other things. So while cloud architect is hot now, in 3 or 4 years, we'll probably have a lot of cloud architects because people saw the inflection in the market and aligned their skills to that skill set. Solution architect, DevOps things, it's always going to change. And typically, the more you specialize in technology, cryptocurrency, and AI, machine learning, things like that, the more you're going to make, but also the more volatile that your pay scale is going to be because the market's going to kind of come and go. So it's always down to the individual, as you said, and I guess recruiters have to be psychiatrists as well as match people up with jobs. But the individuals need to be happy with where their jobs are going, or else it's going to be fruitless. And one of the things I don't recommend is that you chase one of these jobs just for the high salary, because you're going to end up making a huge mistake, then getting the wrong job. And as my father said, you can get paid $1 million a year and still be underpaid if you have the wrong gig.
Yeah, that's a very good saying, actually. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Your father was spot on with that one. And I'd just like to say as well, I think it's down there. The buck stops with the recruiter, if I'm honest, because we're the kind of the gateway for the opportunity. And I think if we don't do our jobs properly or with a moral dignity behind speaking to the client and actually understanding what the outcome of the client is, what do they need the person to do, and how successful does that person need to be doing that outcome. It's all very well having a skill set list, and we've spoken before, I think, on a couple of shows about this. Anyone can have certifications on every different things, but if the person hasn't got the experience or the hands-on of producing the output the client wants, and then if we reverse engineer that's for the recruiter, or whoever, mainly the recruiter, to dig into that, to fact find, to find out what are the outcomes that the client needs in order to make sure that we're giving or getting the right people in for that opportunity. And that sort of it's systemic then from the right pay point to the right attitude to the right outcomes, performance, success of the candidate, etc., quality of life, happy boss, happy employee, and all that sort of thing. So it really is up to us, recruiters in general, if there's many recruiters watching this, to fact find, ask better questions, and actually find out what the output is required by the person that you're going to be putting into that opportunity. And once you've got that, I think that's the magical equation, because once you've got that and you've got the soft skills and the certifications and the outputs that's required by that role, you've got a far better opportunity to having a whole, a successful, happy family at work.
I get a question. Do the companies see eye to eye with you on that, or are they just looking to fill jobs?
Great question. I think it depends on the organisation, and it depends on the volume, and it depends on their time. Now, I always have the discussions, well, do you see recruitment as an investment or a cost? And I always throw that into the mix as well, because that's a very pivotal conversation. Pivotal question at the point where you're talking to people about where they're coming in from a psychosocial point of view of bringing the right people into a team, whether the soft skills are important or whether they're just looking at certifications, CVs and number crunching in that way. But you're looking at a higher turnover, and once you ask the question, is it a cost or investment, some businesses or some employees or hiring managers look at things as just a cost, keeping costs low but keeping a high turnover, which is just ridiculous, because at the end of the day it's going to cost the business more to hire the wrong person. And more often than not, if you're hiring the wrong person, it's because the person you've put in did not know the outputs of what the company actually required. And more often than not, sometimes the hiring manager has not even been relayed that information either on what the outputs are of that particular role. So you have to dig deeper and maybe go to a line manager and find out what is it the line manager needs. So it's not a comfortable conversation sometimes, because people have an old mindset when it comes to employing people, and it can be seen as an unnecessary. You're digging too deep. That's almost none of your goddamn business. And it's like, well, excuse me, at this point it is part of my business because you were having this dialogue, and it's it's just keeping it very transparent, because why should there be anything that I'm not informed about when, you know, I'm being the gap between a very talented cloud professional or, you know, fintech, IoT, AI professional that wants to be represented by Nelson Hilliard, and bringing them into an organisation where I don't fully know what that person's going to be doing on a day-to-day basis from the line manager point of view. You know, it's great to have a relationship with the hiring manager, fantastic, HR department, but equally the dialogue should be transparent enough to have these conversations. And if they're not, then, you know, it can be a very tricky relationship to maintain when you're serving up quality people, you're putting people through, you know, various different interview techniques to find out, you know, really what makes them tick and what they enjoy doing, and then you're teeing them up with something that you don't really know enough information about. You know, you're really on the side of getting a good hiding when it comes to, you know, upsetting people and upsetting people's lives, because ultimately that's what we're doing. You know, that's a huge responsibilities with regards to families and how our decisions or how our choices impact numerous people, not just, you know, a quick phone call to say you haven't got it or you've got it, you know, this is this, this is that. We really need to do the due diligence with the client and ensure the client, we've got their best interests at heart, but we need more information when it comes to the output of what that role actually means to the individual that has got the talents and the skills that we represent, you know.
No, it sounds like you got a good beat on it. And hopefully lots of the companies in Australia have listened to this video cast and will beat a path to your door. I've learned a lot on this podcast, probably more than any other podcast our video cast that we did. Appreciate it.
Oh, thank you very much. Well, I'm sure we'll be retweeting the arse off it, won't we?
Whether you like it or not, it's coming.
David, thanks very much for being part of the training show this week, all the way from sunny Texas. Thanks again for watching, everyone.